On average, 1 in 10 people will experience some form of paranormal phenomena within their lifetime. Here are 5 such tales. 1. I lived for about 20 years in a house in suburban Melbourne. It was built in the mid-1950s and had several families live there before us. There was always a peculiar vibe about the place. Initially we put it down to the previous occupants. We'd met them once when we'd looked at the place while searching for a home to buy. After that, we always privately called them the Addams family. When they'd moved out and before we moved in, we had to give the place a major clean. The previous owners had left the house in a filthy state. One bedroom in particular had streaks of blood across the walls. As soon as we moved in, odd things would happen. Small objects such as jewellery and keys would go missing, only to reappear sometime later in strange places, for example, between the sheets at the foot of a bed, or between dinner plates in a cupboard. Occasionally, my wife and kids would glimpse a little blonde-haired girl in different rooms, and my wife would regularly feel someone stroking her hair as she lay in bed at night. These and other things that happened never made us uneasy. We thought the presence as part of the house, although this story isn't really about the occurrences of the house. I think that somehow the vibe of the place played a part in it. Our youngest son had been given a voice-changing megaphone as a Christmas present. It had 3 or 4 voice settings, and one of those was that of a child. Initially, the toy worked as it said on the box, but one day, as I played with the kids, an odd thing happened. As I spoke into the megaphone, my words were altered, not just my voice, but the actual words themselves. The sentence still made sense, but it plainly wasn't what I had said. In addition, the child voice had taken on a weird, impish quality, taunting and sneering at the same time. The first time it happened, I thought that maybe it was because I'd misheard the voice from the megaphone, or maybe the batteries were going flat and altered the sound being reproduced in some strange way. I replaced the batteries and tried again. The voice was stranger when I tried it again, but only when the child voice was selected. Each time something was said, the words would be changed, the child voice becoming creepier and more demonic. I clearly recall my statement, "I'm going to tickle you," being reproduced in the child voice as, "I'm going to suffocate you." I took the batteries out of the thing and put it well out of reach of the kids. Sometime later, my brother-in-law and I were swapping spooky stories, and I thought of the weird toy. He didn't believe what I told him, so I got down the megaphone from its hiding place and had him try it out for himself. The first few things he said were reproduced in the child voice just as he'd spoken them. Then that impish demon voice came back, and twisted his words as it had done to mine. But not only did the words change, but a horrible devilish giggle that made our skin crawl came from the megaphone. My brother-in-law looked at me with horror and dropped the thing as if it had sprung to life and tried to bite him. After that, I took the batteries out of it again and put it out of reach on top of a high wardrobe. I didn't think about it for years, and when we moved out, the megaphone wasn't one of those lost things that always turns up. I don't know what happened to it. My wife and kids don't know where it went either. I'd love to have it now, even in a new home. I'd love to try it again and see if the creepy little voice was just another aspect of the presence in the old house. It still gives me the creeps when I think about it, in particular that horrible little giggle that came from the thing the last time anyone touched it. 2. In 1999, my stepdaughter, who I'll call Jane, was night supervisor in a large supermarket in the Midlands, in her 40s and very practical minded. At night, the store did not have all its lights on, and Jane was standing in one of the aisles at 3:20 a.m. when she saw clearly a figure wearing a football strip run across the opening about 15 foot away from her. She said it was bright and clear and made absolutely no sound, and reckons it took about 4 seconds before the fixtures hid it from view. Thinking it might be a hoax, she hurried to the coffee room, where all her crew were having a break. None was missing, and none would have had time to change. Twice before, she has seen a dark shadow, which she described as the brief appearance of a scarf-like shape. usually near the bakery section. Someone else had also seen this. Apparently, the store was built on the site of a football pitch, and in 1984, a spectator ran out onto the pitch and was involved in a fatal accident. We don't know any details, but it was said by staff to have been just about where the apparition was seen. When Jane described the dress, it transpired that it was the correct colours for that era. Next morning, she approached the security staff to see if anything had shown up on the video, but nothing had, even though a camera was angled above where the vision had been seen. There was also the matter of a trapdoor to the loft that was found to have been open at the time. Store staff searched the space above and found no sign of an intruder. In any case, anyone up there would have set off the burglar alarm. 3. Back in 1978, when I was 4 or 5 years old, I lived in County Clare, Ireland, renting a house from a local farmer. One night, my older brother and sister ushered me out into the hall while playing a game. I clearly remember being scared, and saw coming from my right a tall, white, stick man, walking extremely quickly as if in fast forward, very similar to the ones in the titles of the TV programme The Saint, only he had a black goatee and flowing moustache, much like Ming the Merciless from Flash Gordon. Another time, shortly after this, we were playing football in the early evening outside my great-uncle Johnny's house when the ball went around the back. As I went to fetch it, I saw the stickman again, walking around the gable end of the house, again very quickly. I screamed, and my mum recalls running from the local well to the house and finding me absolutely terrified, being comforted by my great-uncle and brother. You could argue that the first instant was brought on by my active imagination of being scared and in the dark. But then what would explain the second instant, happening in daylight while having fun playing football? Also, why did I see exactly the same man? 4. Back in the late 1960s, my parents bought the DeForest Motel in Susanville, California. We lived in the home part of the motel, which had the lobby/office in front and our house behind. It had old room units on the right-hand side and a line of new units on the left. It was 2 blocks off the town's main street, that's why we seemed to get the customers last, after the main street places had filled up. But the motel was haunted. Some of the college guys who rented rooms with us reported strange experiences, like the guy in Unit 29 who saw a sort of spectre with a white glow or mist in the doorway. My dad saw it too, in the doorway of the kitchen, as he sat minding the lobby alone. Sitting in the chair, he felt chills and turned to look behind him. It was hovering in the doorway. He asked it to come and watch TV if it wanted to. It just went poof and vanished. Other parts of the motel had a bad feeling. My brother and I tried a bedroom setup in the attic, which you got to by a spooky staircase, but that didn't last long. One night I felt an entity watching us from the doorway and woke up very scared. On other occasions I thought I glimpsed shadowy figures. We told our parents about how bad it was in the attic, even in the daylight. They moved our bedroom out of there. It was above the lobby, and my feeling was that there was something from the past still there, something very bad. Maybe the original owner had done something awful years ago. The basement was just as bad. I always thought it was possibly something buried down there, under a kind of door or hatch in the floor, over on the dark left-hand side. My parents set up a ping-pong room down there for my brother and I, and we had a frightening encounter while playing. Something was in that dark corner, and something threw a piece of bark that nearly hit my brother in the head. None of this was good, and one time we even had a visit from a local minister. My dad played him a tape recording of strange sounds he'd made one night. The clergyman was so scared by it, he never came back. After all the odd experiences, my family went bankrupt on the motel, and we moved out of state. But one misfortune after another has been my family's lot since then, and it makes me wonder why. 5. I teach geology at university in Birmingham. On the 9th of March 2011, I was wandering around a local quarry on a field trip with a class of students, when one student drew my attention to a strange-looking individual about 300 foot away. Something about his behaviour looked eerie. By measuring against a tractor in the distance, I estimated he was about 4 to 4.5 foot tall, and covered in a darkish one-piece garment that clung to his form, a body that seemed totally starved. It appeared to have a helmet on, and pointed an object towards us. This object glowed red, then blue, then off-white. I might then have been distracted because it just vanished. At least none of the group saw it go away. 6 of the students and I reported heavy headaches and trouble sleeping or concentrating since the event, which was 2 days ago as I write this.